There's a version of you, calmer, kinder, more alive, that's waiting to be discovered not at the end of a perfect life, but in the chaos of your everyday. We grow up with this idea, almost like an unspoken rule, that happiness is something we arrive at, like there's this magical moment out there in the distance, when we graduate, when we find the perfect relationship, when we earn enough money, buy the house, get the job, lose the weight, then we'll finally be happy. And so we start chasing, we plan, we push, we wait. But here's the thing no one really says out loud. Even when you reach those milestones, that deep, unshakable joy doesn't necessarily arrive. Often, it's a brief high followed by another goal, another reason to postpone joy. And the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Happiness was never hiding at the finish line. It was always meant to be part of the journey. Every day, we are given quiet, invisible choices that build the foundation of our emotional lives. Do we let the negative self-talk run wild, or do we pause and speak to ourselves with compassion? Do we fill our calendars so tightly we can't breathe, or do we make space for something, anything, that makes us feel alive? These small, seemingly insignificant decisions, how we speak to ourselves, how we spend our mornings, how we respond to failure, they are not just habits. They are acts of construction. Every moment is a brick in the house of your inner world. Happiness doesn't crash down on us like a reward. It grows in the space we create for it, in the choices we make over and over again, even when they feel invisible. Sometimes the hardest part is believing that we are allowed to choose happiness in the middle of imperfection. We don't need a perfectly balanced life to feel content. We don't need all the answers to smile in the sunlight. But we've been conditioned to delay our joy, to believe it's only valid once everything is under control. Yet life rarely gives us that kind of symmetry. There's always something unresolved, unfinished, out of place. And that's exactly why happiness must be something we actively choose, especially on the days when it doesn't come naturally. It's not a denial of reality. It's a declaration that we are more than our circumstances. It's a refusal to let the chaos outside dictate the peace inside. Choosing happiness is a radical act of presence. It means asking, what can I do today in this ordinary moment to connect with something real, something good? It's taking responsibility for your experience without waiting for the world to get easier. It's learning to dance while it's raining, instead of waiting for the storm to pass. Not because it's easy, but because you've realized that waiting for perfect is the fastest way to miss the beautiful mess of now. There comes a point in your life when you realize that not everything or everyone deserves access to your energy, and that realization is not selfishness, it is survival. The world is loud, demands are endless, people will pull at you with expectations, with urgency, with their own chaos, and if you're not careful, you'll start handing over pieces of your peace without even noticing. You'll say yes when your body is begging you to say no. You'll keep quiet to avoid conflict, even when your boundaries are being quietly erased. You'll prioritize being agreeable over being honest. And little by little, your inner world, the place that's supposed to be your sanctuary, starts to feel like a battleground. Protecting your peace doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just stepping away from conversations that drain you. It's turning off notifications because the world doesn't need 24-hour access to your soul. It's not explaining yourself for needing space. It's choosing to leave a message unread because your nervous system is more important than being instantly available. These are not acts of rudeness. They are acts of reverence. Your mental and emotional well-being are not negotiable. And the more you begin to treat them like sacred ground, the more you realize how long you've allowed others to trample through them without permission. We live in a culture that glorifies hustle, productivity, and constant availability, but rarely do we ask at what cost. If you are constantly pushing yourself past your limits to be everything for everyone, who is taking care of you? Who is asking how you feel when you say, "I'm fine," and you're clearly not? There's a quiet kind of courage in stepping back, in saying, "I love you, but I need space," in saying, "I care, but I cannot carry this for you," in reclaiming your right to rest, to solitude, to silence. Protecting your peace doesn't mean shutting the world out. It means building a life where your soul is not constantly on edge, where you don't feel like you're surviving every interaction or drowning in emotional noise. When you begin to treat your peace as something sacred, you become more intentional with who you let into your life, what energy you allow into your space, and what conversations you're willing to entertain. You begin to notice the difference between people who truly care for you and those who are simply accustomed to your compliance. You recognize that love without respect is not love at all. That support without boundaries is just control in disguise. And so you start filtering your life, not through fear, but through wisdom. You realize that protecting your peace is not about shutting people out. It's about choosing, every day, to come home to yourself. There is this subtle, dangerous idea many of us grow up with. The belief that feeling sad, anxious, or overwhelmed means we're doing something wrong. That if we were truly strong, or grateful, or successful, we wouldn't feel this way. So we begin to fear our own feelings. We push them down, cover them up, distract ourselves, numb ourselves. We smile when we want to cry. We stay busy so we don't have to think. We scroll, we binge, we pretend. But the truth is, the very things we're trying to avoid are the ones that most need to be felt. The uncomfortable emotions, the ones we label as bad or negative, they're not signs of failure. They are evidence of your humanity. Sadness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's your soul's way of telling you something matters, that something hurts, that something is asking for attention. When we allow ourselves to feel, even when it's messy, even when it's inconvenient, we begin to heal. But healing doesn't happen when we shame ourselves for being emotional. It doesn't happen when we compare our pain to someone else's and convince ourselves we don't deserve to hurt. It happens when we allow the full truth of our experience to surface without judgment, when we sit quietly with what aches instead of trying to fix it or force it to go away. Emotions are not problems to solve, they are visitors, and every one of them is bringing us information about what we care about where we've been hurt, about what still needs love. In a world that glorifies resilience and moving on quickly, it takes real courage to sit with what's difficult, to say, I'm not okay right now, and mean it, to cry when you need to not rush yourself into positivity just to make others more comfortable, because feeling your sadness doesn't mean you're stuck. It means you're honest. It means you're alive. So many people carry silent grief, quiet heartbreaks, wounds they were never allowed to acknowledge. And in trying to outrun those feelings, they lose connection with themselves. They live guarded, half present, always trying to maintain control. But control is not peace. Numbness is not joy. To be fully human is to be fully emotional, and that means giving yourself permission to feel the hard things too. When we let ourselves feel everything, the grief, the anger, the disappointment, we expand our capacity for joy too, because you can't selectively numb emotion. If you shut out pain, you end up dulling your ability to feel wonder, connection, and love. The depth of your sadness doesn't make you fragile, it makes you deep. It means you have the capacity to care, to connect, to empathize with others in their darkest hours, and that is not a flaw to be hidden. That is something to be honored. So many of us are performing without even realizing it. We walk into rooms and scan them instinctively, adjusting ourselves to fit the expectations, the mood, the culture. We monitor our tone, our posture, our opinions, not because we're trying to deceive anyone, but because somewhere along the way, we learned that being accepted often meant being edited. We learned to shrink the parts of ourselves that felt too much, to mute the parts that might make others uncomfortable. We became experts at blending in, at pleasing, at becoming whoever we needed to be in order to be liked, approved of, or simply left alone. And we wear those masks so long, they start to feel like skin. But underneath all that performance is a version of you that's raw, unfiltered, and breathtakingly real. A version that doesn't need to be curated or polished to be worthy. And yet, showing that version to the world can feel terrifying. Because the more authentic you are, the more vulnerable you feel. You're no longer hiding behind an image or a role, you're standing there as yourself, and that feels dangerous in a world that doesn't always welcome difference. But the cost of performance is your peace. The cost of constantly managing other people's impressions of you is that you lose sight of who you really are when no one's watching. Living authentically doesn't mean being loud or radical or confrontational. It means being honest. It means letting your inside world match your outside behavior. It means telling the truth even when your voice shakes. It means not laughing at the joke that makes you uncomfortable, not agreeing just to avoid conflict, not pretending to be okay when you're falling apart. It's about living in integrity with yourself so that when you go to bed at night, you're not replaying a performance. You're resting in the quiet satisfaction of having shown up as you. The danger of constant performance is that you start to believe your value lies in how well you entertain, impress, or fit in. But authenticity reminds you that you are worthy, not because of what you produce or how well you're received, but because of who you are. When you start living from that place, unapologetically, imperfectly, truthfully, you attract people and experiences that meet you there. You find connection that isn't based on your highlight reel, but on your humanity. You stop exhausting yourself trying to be everything, and instead start becoming yourself. And in doing that, you make space for others to do the same. We live in a time where we are more digitally connected than ever before, and yet in so many quiet and invisible ways, we are starving for real connection. We carry around tiny devices in our pockets that can reach across continents in seconds, and still, there are nights we lie in bed feeling completely alone. It's not the technology that's the problem, it's what we've traded for it. We've mistaken communication for connection. We've replaced long, meandering conversations with quick replies and emoji reactions. We've become so used to seeing people through screens that we forget what it feels like to be fully seen in real life. There is a depth to human connection that no amount of scrolling or liking or commenting can replicate. It lives in the silences between words, in the way someone's eyes soften when they truly hear you, in the warmth of a hand held without needing a reason. That kind of connection requires presence. It asks us to put down our phones, to look up, to stay a little longer in the moment rather than rush off to document it. But we've grown accustomed to multitasking our way through relationships, half listening, half scrolling, half existing in the places we're actually in. And what we don't always realize is that connection, like anything sacred, can't be built while we're distracted. To connect deeply means to show up, not just with your words, but with your attention, your empathy, your vulnerability. It means creating space where someone feels safe enough to say what they really mean. It's not about having dozens of surface-level friendships. It's about having even one or two where you can bring your whole self, unedited. And that kind of intimacy doesn't happen by accident. It takes effort. It takes intentionality. It means being willing to have conversations that are uncomfortable, to ask questions that go beyond, "How are you?" and to stay present long enough to hear the truth behind someone's answer. It means allowing silence without rushing to fill it, because sometimes just being there is enough. We're often taught that success means being busy, being known, being seen by many. But real connection doesn't need a spotlight. It thrives in the quiet, in the mundane, in the everyday rituals of love and friendship that no one ever posts about. It's sitting on the floor and talking about your fears. It's sending a message at 2 a.m. not because you want a response, but because you know someone out there will care. It's the deep sigh of relief that comes when someone says, "Me too," and you no longer feel so alone in your experience. That kind of connection grounds us, heals us, reminds us of what truly matters. Not how many people know our name, but how deeply we are known by the few who matter most. Gratitude is often spoken about like it's a reward for when life is going well, when things are tidy, when outcomes are favorable, when you can look around and say, "Yes, this is what I wanted." But real gratitude, the kind that shifts your perspective and anchors you to the present, isn't reserved for the picture-perfect moments. It's not something you access only when everything aligns. It's something you learn to cultivate in the middle of the mess, in the middle of uncertainty, in the middle of days that don't look or feel like you hoped they would. That's where it matters most, because being grateful for the imperfect doesn't mean denying what's hard, it means finding something worthy within it. We are conditioned to believe that if things aren't ideal, they aren't worthy of appreciation, that if the day wasn't productive, or the relationship isn't perfect, or the body doesn't look a certain way, there's nothing to celebrate. And so we wait, we postpone joy, we scroll through curated lives, quietly measuring our own and feeling like we fall short. But what if gratitude wasn't about measuring up, but about tuning in? What if it was the radical act of noticing the small, ordinary details that somehow carry us through? The sound of rain on the windows, the smile from a stranger, the fact that despite everything, you got out of bed and tried again. Gratitude doesn't ask you to lie to yourself. It doesn't ask you to ignore your pain or pretend everything is fine when it's not. It asks you to hold both truths at once, that things can be difficult and beautiful at the same time, that even when your heart is heavy, there is still something in the world inviting you to feel connected, to feel grounded, to feel alive. And that shift, from focusing on what's lacking to noticing what's present, can be enough to change how you carry yourself through the day. It's not about toxic positivity, it's about resilience, about gently choosing to see what still remains, what still gives you a reason to breathe deeply and continue. In the end, life will never be perfect. There will always be something that's unresolved, something you're waiting for, something just beyond the horizon. But there will also be quiet miracles, often small, often overlooked, that are already here. Gratitude, especially for the imperfect, teaches you to stop chasing and start witnessing, to stop waiting and start appreciating. It teaches you that meaning is not found in a flawless moment, but in the way you choose to show up to an ordinary one, with your eyes open, your heart soft, and your attention fully present. You don't need to change your whole life to be happy, you just need to change the way you meet your life.